Good morning, faculties and my dear. Who's a hypertensive for 30 years and diabetic since 20 years. He has been here with a history of increased frequency of micturition and nocturia since 1 month. And no history of dysuria or hematuria, no history of frequent urinary tract infection. A 68-year gentleman with a known hypertensive and diabetic who has been here with the history of increased frequency of micturition and nocturia since 1 month. And there's no history of dysuria, hematuria, and there's no history of frequent urinary tract infection and no abdominal pain. He gives a history of generalized weakness, and he has a recurrent renal colic since 1982 and a procedure of left open nephrolithotomy in 1982 he had. So for his evaluation of lower urinary tract symptoms, he underwent an ultrasound abdomen and found to have a right suprarenal incidentaloma and hence been referred here for further evaluation. So on retrospective history, he is hypertensive since 30 years with controlled blood pressure on 3 medications. No paroxysms of headache, palpitation, or excessive sweating. There's no symptoms suggestive of Cushing's or hyperaldosteronism, and no history of bone pain, or no fragility fractures, no mood swings, and no history of aseptic disease, and no history of neck surgery. Uh, his father expired of coronary artery disease at 81 years, and mother succumbed to a natural cause of death at 91. And he has uh, 3 siblings. Of the one sibling is hypertensive, and he has no kids, and there is no any syndromic features in the family. So on physical examination, he was obese, no Cushingoid features, no neurocutaneous markers, no morphonoid habitus, and his blood pressure was under well control. No palpable swelling in the neck, except for a previous surgical scar in the abdomen. The rest of the abdomen findings were unremarkable, and other systemic examinations, including neuromuscular, were unremarkable. So on evaluation, he was for his right suprarenal incidentaloma. We could see a non-functional part of biochemical workup, and while on evaluating for the routine uh, biochemistry, we found his calcium was 11.4, and his phosphorus is in the low normal limit. Uh, with normal 24-hour urinary calcium excretion, and his IPTH was 12.05 picomoles, and that time he was having insufficient vitamin D. So we supplemented with vitamin D and then again reevaluated after 5 months, and then we could see his calcium was still on the upper hand and phosphorus is in the low normal limit, and his PTH remains high despite vitamin D being corrected. Uh, the other prolactin and thyroid function tests were of normal. The ultrasound neck, it showed a multiple nodule in the mid pole of left lobe of thyroid, with few showing cystic degeneration, and some are hyperechoic with peripheral halo, and which they have given as TIRAX2, and a hypoechoic well circumscribed lesion of 3 into 6 millimeter in the lower pole of left thyroid with arc type vascularity, suspicious of parathyroid adenoma. This is the hyperechoic left lobe of thyroid with the SOL extending into the isthmus, and the arrow signifying indicating the hypoechoic 6 into 3 millimeter lesion, which we suspicious of parathyroid, enlarged parathyroid. So we went ahead with the functional imaging, technetium 99M MIBI scan. Then the delayed images, they reveal normal washout from the thyroid gland, but there was a persistence of faint tracer. Yeah. The triple phasic adrenal protocol CECT, which we had taken for the evaluation of a right suprarenal lesion, it showed well-defined heterogeneous 5.7 into 5.3 centimeter with the area of soft tissue and fat density in the right suprarenal lesion, right suprarenal region, rising from the right adrenal limb, and the lesion is abutting the inferior surface of liver superiorly, the upper pole of right kidney inferiorly, and the right crest of diaphragm medially. And the left adrenal gland also, it shows a multiple small fatty lesions with an exophytic tumor component of 5 into 4 centimeter from the left. A cross-sectional view of the right uh, heterogeneous fatty lesion and the left adrenal fatty densities with the exophytic component. So impressive of bilateral adrenal myelolipoma. So the diagnosis of primary hyperparathyroidism due to left inferior parathyroid adenoma and left lobe of thyroid thyroid with the TIRADS2 nodule with bilateral adrenal myelolipoma in a hypertensive patient was made. So his ultrasound kidneys were normal in size. The CMD was maintained. A tiny calculus of 5 millimeters seen in the left upper pole. There is no obvious hydronephrosis. BMD is almost normal. An echocardiography has a normal LV contractility with 60% ejection fraction, and fundus was normal. So we planned for unilateral neck exploration with left inferior parathyroidectomy with intraoperative parathormone assay and left hemithyroidectomy. So on neck exploration, we found a 6 into 3 millimeter firm nodule adherent to the left thyroid lobe on its inferior aspect, and this was excised, and this was marked as left inferior parathyroid specimen. But then the patient didn't have a curative fall of IOPTH after excision of this. So we converted from unilateral to bilateral exploration. The carotid sheath, retroesophageal, retrotracheal, thymic portions were examined. A sub-centimeter maroon colored nodule in thyrothymic ligament was also excised along with the left superior cornu of thymus, and left hemithyroidectomy was done. The other parathyroids were normal and preserved. We couldn't get this frozen section biopsy on the day of procedure because of logistic issue. But then this post IOPTH after excising the thymic portions, it had a curative fall, and then we abandoned the further procedure. So this is the other maroon colored nodule along with the thymic portion and left hemithyroidectomy specimen. And the specimen which was labeled as left inferior parathyroid, the first 6 into 3 millimeter specimen which we have excised, that we couldn't see any parathyroid parenchyma in it. It was an unremarkable thyroid follicle. And the specimen which was sent as a thymic tissue, it shows a parathyroid tissue within it, and it has a picture of an adenoma. And left hemithyroidectomy was reported of having a nodular colloid goiter. There's no signs or symptoms of clinical hypocalcemia in the post-op course. His calcium went up to 7.7 milligram per deciliter in the post-operative period. He was started on prophylactic oral calcium supplement from POD1 and discharged on POD6 with 1 gram of oral calcium supplement. So the further plan would be to monitor his serum calcium levels, and for his workup for the adrenal myelolipoma, since this our patient is uh, hypertensive with bilateral adrenal myelolipoma, we have to go for a metabolic workup, and already we have done the hypercortisolism part and metanephrine and normetanephrine and aldosteronism functional part were normal, and we couldn't see any collision tumor in the imaging. So uh, considering the fact that he has got no kids, the congenital adrenal hyperplasia uh, bears uh, it bears a good reason for bilateral adrenal myelolipoma in this setting. So we did a 17-hydroxyprogesterone. The report is yet to be awaited. So once it's been reported, then we would plan for the procedure. So I chose this case as because the combinations of primary hyperparathyroidism with bilateral adrenal myelolipoma, as such, it's very rare and it's been scarcely reported in literature, except for a few case reports. And this is one of the first case reported in 1984 in the Journal of Histopathology, an unusual variant of Men's syndrome, where they had attributed this. Uh, Combination of thyroid and parathyroid with adrenal tumor as a component of Men's syndrome, as because men has a component of adrenal cortical tumors as well. After which a few other cases has been reported where this association of adrenal myelolipoma with primary hyperparathyroidism, they attribute that as an unusual variation of MEN1 syndrome. But still, on complete sequencing and mRNA expression analysis of MEN1 gene, uh, there is no loss of heterozygosity on chromosome 11q13, and a complete DNA sequencing yielded there is no hint that defects of MEN1 gene are responsible for formation of adrenal myelolipomas. So, in view of the rarity of these combinations and scarcity of literatures uh, attributing it to MEN1, I would like the panelists to brief their experience and input on this.
Thank you, sir. It